And now this third woman, folks may not be familiar with. This is Sunsara Taylor of the Revolutionary Communist Party. And I was touched. I got a press release from them today. I'm on their press list. And they announced that Sunsara Taylor is on a speaking tour against wokeism. And I'm like, damn, good for her. Good for her. It's about time that some of these communists woke up against wokeism, right? We own the great Peter Coffin, who I think is watching right now. I wrote a great book exposing the woke insanity and how dumb it is, why you need to oppose it as a leftist. Just a great book. And I've read it. I've done streams about it. I've interviewed him about it. Peter Coffin wrote the book on wokeism, Woke Ouroboros, right? About how it's a snake eating its own tail. You know, and I am happy to see any leftist condemnation of wokeism. Now I'm going to show a clip where some woke students have like an argument with Sunsara Taylor when she was speaking at UC San Diego, right? You know, and it's an interesting clip. I mean, she has her limitations, but we're going to watch the clip. But go and read Peter Coffin's book. If anyone has qualification to talk about wokeism, if anyone really takes it apart, it's Peter. Peter does great. And yes, Peter, we're glad to have you here. This is a tremendous contribution you made. I hope the RCP reads this. I hope that the Revolutionary Communist Party, I hope you send it to them. I think you should just send it to them in the mail. You know, just send them a copy to their bookstores. You know, I think you should, you know, make them engage with it. You know, they're not where we're at. I don't think they're not where you're at, Peter, but I think you should stay on top of them about this because, you know, if they're starting to see the light about how dangerous and toxic the wokeism is, you know, I think this is something. So I'm going to show you this clip. This is Sunsara Taylor when she had a confrontation with some woke students. But before I say that, tomorrow, like the day after this stream, the 24th of May, today is the 23rd, Sunsara Taylor is speaking at UCLA. She is actually having an event at UCLA tomorrow. Go and look it up. If you are a fan of this community and you're in the LA area, go to that event. I am calling on you. Anybody who is in our circle, anyone who's part of this community and lives near Los Angeles, go to Sunsara Taylor's event tomorrow and get up during the Q&A and tell them you're with the Center for Political Innovation or you're a fan of the Center for Political Innovation or you love this and that she is absolutely right to oppose wokeism and that she should check out our stuff. That'd be a great place to intervene. I wish we had people in LA right now. We have a lot of people in the Bay Area. We got people in different areas, but I can't think of, I've texted a few contacts we have in the Bay Area, in the LA area. But if you're in the LA area, please go to this event, right? And if she has events around the country, we'll make sure that our members go because I think this is a really good development to see leftists calling out wokeism. Now, that said, okay, they're still not where we're at. They still don't get it. And you'll see that when you watch this clip. But it certainly is amusing to watch these woke students, you know, get all hoity-toity at Sunsara Taylor. It's certainly an entertaining clip. I watched this afternoon. And I mean, it was interesting. This is where politics is at. This is certainly an interesting. So I'm going to skip ahead to the part where Sunsara is at, she's at UC San Diego, right? And the woke students, they take her on and she engages them. So here we go.
Improves their mental health and prevents suicides. So following that up, I guess I'm wondering why I'm seeing like kind of reactionary rhetoric against preferred pronouns. This is, I guess, a very disingenuous argument because it is possible to both care about children starving in the third world and also care about trans people.
I kind of raised an eyebrow at word choices like lunacy and real revolution ostensibly versus fake revolution. You know, do we believe in this, the others do not, etc. And it kind of perturbs me.
Okay. Yeah, look at her face, by the way. She is totally like, she's like, all right, I'm being really nice. I'm going to give you a fake laugh here. You're full of shit, kid. Can you just shut up, kid? I mean, but she's trying her hardest to be accommodating to these people, but she's tired of the bullshit. Sunsara is tired of this bullshit.
On the whole, I mean, maybe this is just me, but when it comes to the things that I agree with you with, namely things like cancel culture being a farce, the things that I agree with you with.
Like, I get it, kid. I get it. I'm pretending. I'm holding back my anger. I love this.
With my response is, well, no shit. And the things that I disagree with you with, I'm left feeling like, again, like you're overgeneralizing things.
The name of the article that's in that pamphlet is Pronouns and Starving Children. And he starts out the article by pulling the lens back to the big picture in the world. And he says, since World War II, just think about this statistic, 250 million children, if I'm getting the statistic right, 250 million children have died of starvation and preventable disease because of capitalism. You know, because we live in a system where food and medicine are not produced to meet social need, they're produced as commodities to be bought and sold for a profit. No other reason than that.
Yep, and the countries that have alleviated that are socialist countries. Libya had the highest life expectancy in the African continent. China has raised 800 million people out of poverty. Socialism in Cuba and in Nicaragua and many places has cured that. But the countries of the world where you still have people dying of malnutrition, etc., are countries that are still under the domination of Western capitalism and imperialism, holding back development, capitalism in its monopoly stage. Important to make these points. Continue.
You know, if someone lined up 250 million children up,
It's 350.
350. If someone lined up 50 children up against a wall and shot them one by one in front of you, everyone would say, what a fucking barbaric system. Like, let's get together and stop whoever's doing that from doing it. But literally, you know, millions of children every year are dying of starvation and preventable disease for no other reason than the fact that the system is dominated by a tiny class of capitalists and enforced by police and military. You know, and
yep, exactly. The global system of monopoly capitalism is holding back development and keeping the world poor. Now, what he's leaving out here, and this is really important, is that Joe Biden's faction wants to make it worse. Joe Biden's faction says the problem is overpopulation. They want to double the number of children that are dying because they think there are too many people in the third world. And that's what he's leaving out. Now, he forgets that, but you know, Donald Trump and all of them, they want to increase the population, right? Because they want to make more profits. But the faction that is backing wokeness, the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, Carlos Slim, you know, Jeff Bezos, they want those numbers they just listed to go up. And they are actively trying to prevent China from building power plants in Africa that would provide electrification because they say, oh, power plants pollute. We can't have that. So that's worth pointing out. You know, that's something that I think is relevant, is that the woke faction, when it comes to children in the third world dying of malnutrition, people in the third world dying because of a lack of development, lack of access to medical care, etc., the woke faction wants to increase and exacerbate those problems.
we have the power to actually do something about that. But what is going on college campuses and beyond is people are focused on pronouns. People are focused on
trans people.
Look,
let me roll that back so you hear that. But he's right. I mean, he's right. What should we be focused on? What is the moral imperative, right? Is it people dying from lack of medical care? Is it, Africa being ground into poverty? Is it this food crisis that's been artificially created by driving Russia out of the food markets and out of the oil and gas markets? You look at what's gone on since the pandemic in Africa in terms of malnutrition. You look at the rising costs of energy and food. I mean, there's a global economic crisis being fomented by Wall Street. People are dying all over the world. And, the left is mad that somebody didn't call somebody the right name.
Enforced by police and military, and we have the power to actually do something about that. But what is going on college campuses and beyond is people are focused on pronouns. People are focused on
trans people die.
Look,
I mean, how can?
But millions of trans people die. Yes, they died because someone didn't call them the right pronoun. They died because someone made a mistake and unintentionally called them the wrong pronoun, and that caused them to die. Did he seriously just make that argument? Did someone literally just say, but millions of things are bad for trans young people. I know that, you know, and there needs to be more services and bullying needs to be gotten rid of. There needs to be compassion. But did he really just compare people in Africa by the millions dying because capitalism keeps their countries in poverty to, I don't even know where to begin.
This is true, actually, and he makes the point. We'll get to you. 1 second, we'll get to you. He makes the point. I'm not here to argue about what pronouns people use. And
then why do you keep bringing it up? Oh my God, the fact that you're criticizing my focus means you're like racist. Why do you keep bringing it up? Because it's a valid point that the USA is waging a war to destroy Russia, to try and grind people into poverty, and people are starving, and no one who's a leftist will do anything about it. But God forbid somebody posts the wrong meme, they have their lives destroyed, and they are all calling up their job and trying to get them fired. He's got a valid point. That's why he's bringing it up, is that you guys are not actually fighting against the wars. You're not actually fighting against the low-wage police state. You're fighting against working-class people who do the wrong thing and don't play by your stupid woke rules. That's why he's bringing it up. It's a big problem. You guys are cowards. You're bullies, right? You're more interested in attacking weak people, working class people who maybe didn't go to NYU and get the proper education than you are in fighting Joe Biden, than you are in fighting Jeff Bezos and the rich. You target people that are smaller than you, people that don't have the education that you have, people that don't have the access that you have, people that don't have the woke politics that you have, and you let the system off the hook. It's a big problem. Yeah, that's why he's bringing it up. And I wish more people would bring this up because it's a big fucking problem.
And in the quote that Sunsara read earlier, Bob Avakian made very clear that the attacks on trans people should be like vigorously fought. But look, all the obsession with identity, this is what we're talking about. We're not just talking about, the phenomenon here is not just people wanting to use their preferred pronoun. I'll use whatever pronoun people want us to use.
Right, he's not an asshole, right? If someone wants one pronoun, he'll do his best to remember to use it, right? To be respectful.
It is horrific, the suicide statistics among trans, something like 50%.
There's no argument.
Absolutely, right? There's no reason to be an asshole. We should oppose bullying. We should oppose discrimination. We should want people to get the proper care they need, want people to be taken care of, let people be who they want to be.
Made against using preferred pronouns. There's an argument. Hold on.
There's not an argument. You're not even saying against it.
Hold on. No.
That's a Mondaily.
No, it's not. There's an argument over the obsession with it, over the canceling of people. And you better believe people are being spit on for making mistakes. And people are posturing like that's doing a damn thing to change the world. You are completely right that the culture and the acceptance of trans youth and trans people overall has everything to do with their mental health. But let's be real. If we want to end this horror for trans people, for queer youth and queer people as a whole, for women, for the 8 billion people on this planet who won't have a sustainable planet, we need to overthrow the system. And yes, people can do both. Pay attention to pronouns and to the 350 million starving children. Yes, they can. But let's be honest. Where do you see anything, and I have to say, to your idea that, revolution, the things I agree with, no shit. Where do you see anybody in this country fighting to bring this system down, to overthrow it so we don't have...
Yeah, there's no class struggle ideology. No one's talking about building a working class movement to seize the means of production. All we hear is just a bunch of woke and all Republicans are Nazis and oh my God, women's sports and yeah. And she says, everything that he hears that he agrees with is no big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal because no one talks like legit communists anymore. She's being way more accommodating than I would be. Okay. I might have sounded like her 4 or 5 years ago, but my patience has run out, right? She's being way more accommodating than I would be. I'll just tell you that much. 350
more children starved to death and the planet set on fire. Where do you see that happening? I do not see people doing both. If we did, there wouldn't be that article. What you see instead is people thinking they are doing something, but it's precisely the cancel culture, the tear down culture, the you messed up an identity, the you be quiet and follow me because of my oppressed identity. That is not changing the world. That's playing around.
She's absolutely right. It's a way that these people can feel they accomplished something. Instead of fighting the system, they fight Joe Bob, who's wrong. They fight Joe Bob, who said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing. And in a lot of cases, Joe Bob didn't even do anything wrong. Joe Bob just became a target because for whatever reason. You know, it's easier to fight random dude who did something wrong than it is to fight the system. And these wokes are bullies, right? Bullies never pick on anyone their own size. They target somebody who's not in a position to fight back. They're cowards. They're too afraid of getting arrested and going to jail like the Uhuru movement. They're too afraid of getting their heads busted in. So they go after Joe Bob and they let imperialism and capitalism and the low-wage police state off the hook. And it pisses me off.
And there is no argument.
A Band-Aid compared to really healing.
Yeah, it's true. And there is no argument. I will say, you're saying it's disingenuous. It's disingenuous to ascribe an argument. Look, there are people, we all know it's true. There are people who get out there and make a point of refusing to use people's preferred pronouns. And it's fucked up. And you are right to call that kind of thing out. But it's.
Yeah, it is. But like, people are assholes. You know, like, you're right. I mean, okay, I'll be with you. If people are going out of their way to be an asshole to somebody who's trans and go out of their way to be like, I'm not going to call you what you, that's not nice. But like, people are not nice, folks. I mean, people call people names. People insult other people. People attack people on a personal level. I mean, it's not okay. I don't condone that kind of behavior, but I mean, is that comparable to 350 million children dying because of lack of access to medical care because of capitalism and imperialism? I mean, you know, I'm against bullying of any kind. I'm against people being assholes. But like, does she have to say this? On what planet do you have to even explain this? People being insensitive and rude is not the same as genocide. People being insensitive and rude is not the same as mass death from malnutrition and poverty. Like, why? Like, what planet do these people live on where you have to explain that?
Disingenuous to say that's what's being done in this piece. There's something being done precisely to get under people's skin, and I'm glad it got under your skin in a good way, and I hope you think about it and others do too, to say, where are we focused? That's where he began. What is the big picture? Where are we focused?
So as you can see, this was
that was a great interaction. I thought that was tremendous. And there's more. I think this is great. This is really, really great. You know, and I love this. I am going to promote this, right? And I don't think the RCP people necessarily like me, but I don't care, right? The fact that they're saying this, right? The people who led the Stop Trump, Trump's a Fascist campaign, that they're out there saying this. I mean, if anybody, them saying this is a big deal. So let's continue.
This system with what its militaries and occupations and terror and torture around the world, you actually have to bring that down. There's no other way. So to do that, and this gets to the brother who asked the question about why is revolution more possible now. Raphael was talking about a big part of this. I just want to underscore it because we're living in a rare time.
And this is where she gets completely off the rails. I mean, this is where I really disagree with her. I mean, and it's painful for me to listen to this because it's like I'm listening to someone who's so right and they're also so goddamn wrong. And this is where she goes off the rails, but I want you to hear this.
And the person who left early about we're going, you know, could be the Holocaust in that exact form. History doesn't repeat itself, but we are heading towards something horrific. You know,
I agree. Yes, capitalism when it's in crisis. If you don't, the only way they can get out of these crises, the Communist Manifesto says, is by degrowth and reducing the population, more thorough exploitation of the markets, and conquest of new markets with war. So she's right. This system is heading toward a major catastrophe, Holocaust-like events, wars, etc., to try and save their system. Fascism is saving capitalism from a crisis of overproduction with mass destruction, death, and terror. That's what fascism is. So she's right about that, but she gets crazy here. We'll just keep listening.
The Christian fascists who took over the Supreme Court.
Oh boy, the Christian fascists who took over the Supreme Court. Oh boy,
they're not stopping. They are really going for Handmaid's Tale.
how's that?
It's going to be a nightmare. The planet is burning up. The horrors of what climate destruction has already done to.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, good Lord. You do realize that they're planning more mass deaths in the third world. They want to, stop development in the third world and kill more children in the third world. And they're saying we have to accept it because of climate change. You do realize that, right? Climate change is the main argument they're using to push degrowth in the developing world, Sunsara.
Latin America and other countries where people are fleeing, and then the nightmare being unleashed by Border Patrol, by all over the world, the camps people are piling up in. The nightmare that is happening for humanity on a global scale that most people are not looking at and thinking about in this country. We are living in a time when the ways that people have been accustomed, you said this system's gone on for a long time, people have been accustomed to accept this system as legitimate because it's played by certain rules. There's been peaceful transfer of power. Maybe we don't like certain things, but at least we have a say-so and at least we have peaceful transfer of power. Well, that's being blown up.
Not by Trump, not by Donald Trump. If you think that January 6th was an attempt to prevent peaceful transfer of power, you're delusional. It was a rowdy protest. It was a bunch of Trump supporters went into a building they weren't supposed to go into and farted in Nancy Pelosi's desk chair. It was not an attempted coup.
Look what happened in Tennessee. This is happening. It's escalating by the week. Tennessee, students get massacred. They do a walkout. 2 junior state representatives stand with them, 3 actually. 2 of them are young and black, and the fascist majority of the Republican State House says, doesn't matter that you were elected, you are no longer representatives.
Montana, too.
Yeah.
Then they did it, exactly, I was gonna go there next. Then they did it last week. Fascists looked at it, ooh, new play. We're gonna put that.
Yeah, and like a bunch of Trump supporters are in jail for walking into the Capitol building when the police told them to. The Uhuru movement are facing 10 years in federal prison for sharing articles about Ukraine. This is a group of black revolutionaries. The political stakes are certainly escalating right now. And the Republicans are playing hardball and the Democrats are playing hardball. But the Democrats clearly have the upper hand, Sunsara. The Democrats are the ruling party right now, and they are the ones that are marching us toward World War III, and they are the ones marching us toward a police state. They're the ones torturing Julian Assange. It's like, yeah, Republicans are doing bad shit too, but that's because we're entering divisions in the ruling class and political warfare.
In our playbook, they passed a fascist trans law there, and the trans representative, look, I don't think you can solve this with reforms and by entering this system, but this trans representative got up and said, when you go home and pray tonight after passing this law, I hope when you look at your hands, you see the blood of trans youth on them. Because you're absolutely right, the death rates, the suicide rates, this is what's gonna happen.
She's trying so hard to say, look, I'm on your side, guys, but you have to have common sense, right? She is pandering so hard to these wokes, but they're still going to cancel her, right? It doesn't matter. You can bend over backwards for these assholes. It does not matter. No matter what you do, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a white supremacist. If you're not pro-imperialist, if you're not part of their little Democrat Party fan club, look how hard she's pandering to them. Do you think any of them are going to stop calling the RCP a cult? Do you think any of them are going to stop, calling her a TERF? But look how hard she's pandering. It doesn't matter.
They said, oh, out with you. This is not a democracy. Look, he's right. The democracy was always a cover for a class dictatorship. But right now, the ways that people have been conditioned to accept this system are being ripped up. And what it is mainly leading to is the fascists are on a tear, and people in this country with their American privilege and their comfort are large.
Their American privilege and their comfort, while they're losing their jobs, while they're dying from opioids, while their children are in jail at the highest rates of incarceration in the world, while the electricity isn't even working in parts of New England, their American privilege and comfort. Is that what you're talking about, Sunsara?
Largely retreating inward to themselves. They're hiding from this reality. And you have a situation where the fascists are on the march and the decent.
Yes, and Joe Biden is the fascist. He wants to set up a low-wage police state. He wants to march us into World War III. He's trying to make it illegal to question U.S. foreign policy. He's trying to imprison the Uhuru movement. They're torturing Julian Assange right now. Sorry, who supports Julian Assange, Sunsara? Your party supports Julian Assange. I've seen members of your organization go to Julian Assange events. Carrie Lake just made a Facebook a tweet supporting Julian Assange. Carrie Lake, the Trump Republican in Arizona, supports Assange, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene supports Assange. Sarah Palin supports Assange. Joe Biden is prosecuting Assange. How much do I need to wake you up on this, my dear?
People have their heads up their fucking asses and are laying down for this. And why are we taking on woke and why are we challenging people? Because decent people are playing around canceling each other over petty shit.
She's right about that.
Rather than facing this real horror and standing up to it. But
the real horror is not coming from the Republicans, Sunsara. It is coming from the Democrats. The Republicans are just trying to fight it off, right? You look at Trump's administration, it was just an attempt to kind of hold back to some degree what was going on under the Obama administration. You know, I mean, we got a new war with Biden. I mean, the Trump administration was just kind of a libertarian administration, deregulating things and trying to some degree to not be as hawkish and failing. Whereas the Biden administration is actively pushing degrowth, actively pushing austerity, actively marching us to World War III, actively imprisoning left-wing voices like the Uhuru movement, actively prosecuting Julian Assange, actively censoring the internet and manipulating social media to push their agenda. I mean, yes, there is a fascist horror, Sunsara, but it ain't coming from the Democrats. But it ain't coming from the Republicans. It's coming from the Democrats.
We're in a time when, because the norms are being ripped open, there are big questions being forced open that if we got serious.
And she's right about this. She's right about all of this, except she's got it backwards.
If we got organized, if we spread this, we are the RevCom's mission. Read it. This is what we're doing. We're spreading it to millions right now. We need to be able to work together as you're learning about it. Get this out there. Let them know there's a different way we could be and work together, debating. We could be reaching millions in a time like this. And the other thing that makes it a rare time that actually speaks to why a revolution, how it could be made in a way that is not normally possible, is that the divisions among the rulers go down through every part of society, including among the population and also within the institutions of the state.
Exactly. And you're on the wrong side.
Including their armed forces and their institutions of repression. They're not all, half of them for revolution and half of them for fascism. But when you have fascist laws and you have half your military, or 80% of it is people from among the oppressed, who are being called out. Look, there was a little window. I'm going to give two examples, then we're going to go somebody who didn't raise. Yeah, you hadn't spoken yet. During 2020, it's very interesting, and this is an indication of what makes this a unique time. When the National Guard was called out to Washington, D.C., and the U.S. military with the Black Hawk helicopters in D.C. so Trump could walk across and pose in front of the church, a lot of those National Guard are black, Latino. A lot of the black guardsmen were ashamed to tell their families what they were doing, that they were there to police the Black Lives Matter protests. And you see how even their own armed forces, during Vietnam, the armed forces split apart. During the Vietnam War, after they were getting their asses kicked, it was an unjust war, huge numbers of people. There's a film, Sir No Sir, about the rebellion within the military. They couldn't deploy their military because
Biden is more pro-war. Biden is more pro-war. Trump wants to cut off aid to Ukraine. Biden wants to send more weapons to Ukraine. How can you invoke the anti-war movement? The Democrats are more pro-war. Like, how can you say this with a straight face? Oh my God. Seriously. The Democrats are more pro-war. You're invoking the anti-war movement. The Democrats are more pro-war. The soldiers who would refuse to fight in the war would be Republicans. Oh my God. How hard is this to understand? Who did all this? The soldiers that were anti-war. What candidate have they donated overwhelming to? Ron Paul. Ron Paul. Oh my God. Have you not listened to anything? All this fascism crap that you're repeating, Trump's a fascist, everyone's a fascist. That's what they're saying about Putin to justify World War III. That's what they're saying about China to justify World War III. That's what they said about Gaddafi. That's what they said about Assad. Oh my God. My God, she can be so right. She's right about everything except she's on the wrong side. If there were a civil war in the United States between the Trump supporters and Joe Biden and his administration, what side do you think Russia would be on? What side do you think China would be on? What side do you think Iran would be on? What side do you think Cuba would be on? What side do you think Nicaragua would be on? What side would the people of the world be on? What side would the majority of Africa be on? How can you say this? You are supporting the more pro-war, the more pro-fascist police state wing, the more pro-starving the third world wing of the ruling class. You know, Trump is awful. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Republican. But the section of the ruling class that you are supporting is the more dangerous section. They are actively talking about starving and depopulating the third world, Sunsara. They want more weapons. Marjorie Taylor Greene is more anti-war than any Democrat. This is infuriating. You're invoking the anti-war movement to tell us that we should support Biden in a divide in the ruling class. Biden's more pro-war.
Panther Party leaders, because other anti-war leaders were more popular than the president among the military. And so there were all kinds of units that wouldn't go out and fight anymore. And they couldn't deploy their...
And why do you think they're trying to wokeify the military right now? Because many people in the military don't want new wars. Who's the leading anti-war voice in the mainstream? Tulsi Gabbard, who's also a TERF, critical of the trans issue. You're on the wrong side.
You can have, in a time like this when the norms are being ripped up, you actually have splits in their institutions. You saw dimensions of this with the overturning of Roe as well.
Yes, that is true. And you're on the wrong side.
U.S. veterans, female veterans, who said, I fought for this country, I served this country. They came back and they burned their uniforms when that right got taken away. They said, what did I fight for? I'm treated as a second-class citizen. What is this country? You start to see the contours of how you could actually break apart and weaken there. You still are going to have a fight.
Yes, but the Biden administration is strengthening the state. The people breaking apart the state right now. The people trying to weaken the Pentagon, the people that are trying to weaken the FBI are the Trump people. Sunsara, think for a minute. Think.
They're still going to be powerful, but they're less powerful. They're more prone to being split apart, and there's more basis to win people among the revolutionaries among the people. And if you waste a time like this, we are headed towards something horrific when we could actually bring about something truly emancipating, which is why we're fighting with people to think of the big picture. Think of the 300 million children around the world. Think about the world future for the planet. And let's seize this time.
I mean, it's just the problem with these communists. I'm just telling you, I've been among communists since I was 19. And the problem with them is that they have never met anyone who's not a Democrat. It's like their entire worldview is centered around the Democratic Party. You know, yeah. What do you expect? You know, their entire view is centered around the Democratic Party. And they don't understand. They don't understand that this notion of the Democrats, the Republicans are always the main danger. Maybe the Democrats don't fight them hard enough. That narrative has to be gotten rid of, right? That's the way the left has talked since the 1950s, right? It's always the Republicans are the main danger, and the problem with the Democrats is they don't fight the Republicans hard enough. That narrative needs to be gotten rid of, because at this point, the Democrats are more in favor of police state repression. The Democrats are more in favor of shutting down dissident voices. The Democrats are more in favor of wars and military interventions. The Democrats are more in favor of political repression. You go down the line on every issue, the Democrats are more dangerous, right? So this narrative, that doesn't mean we should support the Republicans. I'm not endorsing the Republicans by any means. But this narrative where leftists, communists, Marxists, anti-imperialists, we always say that the Republicans are the main danger and the Democrats are frauds because they don't fight the Republicans hard enough. That's not how politics works anymore. You need to get rid of that narrative. And in fact, it's going to be hard and difficult, but the lower levels of capital that tend to be aligned with the Republicans, the folks who back Ron Paul, the folks who back Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard, those folks eventually are going to have to recognize that it is in their economic interest to do business with Russia and China. and they're going to have to form and enter some kind of united front with the working class against the big monopolies and the imperialists. And it's not easy, and we're not there yet, and they wouldn't do it at this point. But we're heading toward that kind of escalation. As I said before, if there was some kind of civil war in the United States, God forbid, because we do not want that by any means. We don't want that. But if there was a civil war in the United States, if you're an anti-imperialist, what side would all the anti-imperialist countries be on? Right? If there was a Biden, Kamala Harris civil war versus a Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson civil war, what side do you think the colonized world would be on? I think it's pretty obvious. I think we all know the answer to that. And if you call yourself an anti-imperialist, if you're genuinely concerned about that 350 million children, why would you align yourself with the people who want to prevent them from getting electricity, with the people who say building power plants in the third world, is not allowed because then the poor people will breed and it'll ruin Mother Earth? They don't get it. They really, really don't get it. That the Democrats are becoming the mainstream party of imperialism, and you're either with them or against them. And the other thing is, no matter how hard she panders, and I saw Peter in the chat saying, I wish I could talk to this person. We need to talk to her, right? If anyone's watching this in the LA area, go to the event tomorrow. Go and tell her how much we at the Center for Political Innovation would like to talk to her. Don't think there's much hope there. I've been in communist circles for years. RCP is not fans of me and vice versa. But, the fact that they are coming out against wokeness, that they feel so strongly about coming out against wokeness that they're having events like this, that's a big deal. And we should try to get in on some of the action. We should send our people to those events to represent us, right? If you're in the LA area, I would encourage you to go to the event tomorrow. Be very polite. Don't disrupt or anything, but during the Q&A, repeat some of what I've said here, right? And record yourself doing it, right? Because we need to open this dialogue, right? What Sunsara and all of them need to understand is you will never please these people. Last summer, the RCP was doing exactly what woke progressives are supposed to do. They overturned Roe versus Wade, and Sunsara and all of her friends were going into churches and disrupting and having big protests, and Sunsara was standing next to AOC with her microphone protesting for Roe versus Wade. And so what did MSNBC do? Did they say, wow, well, we don't agree with communism, but it is sure good that you were out there protesting for the right to an abortion? No! The Intercept ran a hit piece on them. Yahoo News ran a hit piece on them. Vice ran a hit piece on them. They announced to everybody, oh no, this group that's been protesting around this thing we agree with, Roe versus Wade, in support of abortion rights, they're all a bunch of cultists. They're crypto red-brown fascists. They're brainwashing people. They like Stalin and Mao, who's kind of like Hitler. They went after them. You will never please these people. The woke fascists, they equate all anti-imperialist countries with the Nazis and with Donald Trump. They literally march with pictures of Donald Trump and Stalin and Mao, and Donald Trump with hammers and sickles behind him, right? They think all illiberalism is Nazism, and they are out to defend the liberal order and silence and cancel and harass and destroy the lives of anybody who gets in the way of the liberal order. They think if you like Stalin, if you like Mao, that you're the same as Donald Trump. They think Donald Trump is bad because Donald Trump is like Mao. So if you call yourself a Maoist, you can't be with these people. And a lot of the people who support Trump, they don't know it. What they want from Donald Trump is Mao. They want Donald Trump to have 5-year plans and build up the economy. They want Donald Trump to end the wars and bring the troops home. They want Donald Trump to fight for the working class against the capitalist bosses. They don't know that yet. They don't have the language for it yet. But if you listen to Trump's quantum leap speech, a lot of Trumpism is the longing for a government of action to fight for working families. But politics in America has gotten so weird and confused, they don't know that, right? And that means we have to go out and do our job. And that means we have to just go out and teach Marxism and raise a transitional program. It's hard work. It is not easy to be a revolutionary. It's not easy to be an anti-imperialist. It's not easy. It means you have to have difficult conversations. And to their credit, they're doing that, right? They are going to the campuses and they are saying wokeism is no good. And but they need to understand it's way they don't know the half of it. I mean, I would start by giving them Peter Coffin's book. I would start with this, right? I would start with Peter Coffin's book. But I'd have Sunsara on here anytime to discuss this issue with her. Doubt she would come on, but she's welcome to come on anytime. And I encourage people, go to her events. Go to these events. If you're in LA, go to the event tomorrow at UCLA. Go to these events and engage with them, because the fact that they have realized how dangerous wokeism is, that they're spending their resources to start coming out against it, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. They're starting to get it. They're starting to get it. Right? Look, I talk in my new book. I talk about the Boston Trap, and I actually talk about the Revolutionary Communist Party and how when they got started, back when they were the Revolutionary Union, they had the right instinct, out of the movement to the masses. And there were events that I'd call the Boston Trap. I'm not going to get into specifics because, we're ending towards the end of the opening remarks here. But they kind of got pushed into the direction that they're in now. But the economy has changed. Political discourse in America has changed. We got to get out of the Boston Trap. And we got to repudiate the Great Retreat. Go read my book, Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. Where is America going? Go and read my book. And you'll know what I'm talking about. But the Boston Trap and the Great Retreat, those two things, those two negative occurrences that were kind of forced on the communist movement by historical circumstances, the Great Retreat and the Boston Trap. The new communist movement, which her group, the Revolutionary Communist Party, comes out of, was one of many groups that were formed, communist organizations that wanted to align with China. They thought the CPUSA were reformists. They wanted to align with China. They did a lot of great work. They had many great rallies and demonstrations. They had many thousands of members. But the way the U.S. developed during the 1970s, you had the Boston Trap, and you had the Great Retreat. And both of those events kind of pushed leftists into this weird position of being the Democratic Party's foot soldiers. And now is the time to repudiate the Boston Trap, to repudiate the Great Retreat, and to go out of the movement to the masses. And that's what the Center for Political Innovation is all about. Out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. Dare to struggle, dare to win. That is what we are all about. I'll quickly tell you about both of those things, right? In my book, in chapter 4 of my book, I talk about how in 1974 in Boston, there were these racist riots that were happening. And it was against school integration. A lot of white working class people in Boston didn't want their kids to go to school with black people. They were racist. And so they were rioting against busing. It was awful. But the Black Panthers also opposed busing. The Black Panthers wanted black schools for black children. The Nation of Islam, a lot of black nationalists were against busing. And on top of that, the forces supporting busing happened to be some of the wealthiest forces, the Ford Foundation and the liberals, the wealthy liberal think tanks. So under those circumstances, the Revolutionary Communist Party made a mistake, which was a mistake. And they admit they made a mistake. People make mistakes. They made a mistake and they supported the anti-busing riots. They said, well, we can oppose busing and say communism is the answer, not busing. And we can somehow recruit the white working class people that have joined these racist riots. Big mistake. Big mistake. They made the mistake. They supported the racist busing riots. Well, obviously, they screwed up. They fucked up. That was wrong. But then the memo got sent out. They realized they made a mistake. The whole left attacked them for making this mistake. And then the memo got sent out. That's what happens when you don't go along with the mainstream left. That's what happens when you don't follow the Democrats. You can never support anything right-wing If something's labeled right wing, you're not allowed to support it. Look what happened in Boston. And based on a mistake, they were coming from a good place. They had the right instinct. They said, we see what the liberals are doing. We don't want to go with them. We see what the black revolutionaries are doing, what the Nation of Islam, what the Black Panthers are doing. We want to be with the black revolutionaries. And we see that these are working class people who are rioting against busing, and we want to recruit them. They had the right instinct. They said, we want to be with the black revolutionary movement. They said, we want to be with the working class when they're in motion. We want to be against the ruling class liberals. They had the right instincts. They made a mistake, and they supported the racist busing riots. Big mistake. But because they made that mistake, and because that went so badly for them, that created this mindset among communist and socialist groups that you can never be against the liberals and with the broad masses of the people. You always are defending the liberals from populism. Trump supporters are not racist anti-busing rioters in Boston. A lot of Trump supporters are just working class people who want jobs and healthcare and education. They want better schools in their communities. They want better jobs. They want to end the wars. They're the kind of people we need to be talking to. We shouldn't be tailing them. We shouldn't be, telling them they're right about anti-immigrant bigotry or anti-Islamic bigotry. But it is the working class people, black and white and Latin and Asian, who are supporting Donald Trump. That's who we need to be talking to, because they're the ones that are mad at the establishment. But this Boston trap has led to communists thinking, oh, we can never support anything right-wing. We can never go against the liberals. Big thing. We got to repudiate the Boston trap. The second thing we got to repudiate is called the Great Retreat. 1978, the U.S. economy tanked under Jimmy Carter. The U.S. economy tanked. And the U.S. economy had been pretty good since World War II, but it was the biggest economic downturn since the end of World War II. And so a lot of these communist groups, not just the RCP, a lot of these communist groups, the Communist Workers' Party, the October League, the Progressive Labor Party, they said, well, now the American working class, their living standard is going down. So now is the moment they're going to listen to us, right? And so they did a lot of crazy adventurous stuff. The Communist Workers' Party challenged the Ku Klux Klan to a fight, and the Klan showed up and shot 5 of them and killed them. It was called the Greensboro Massacre. It was a horrendous incident. The RCP, they decided to do some crazy stuff. They did May Day 1980, this crazy, radical ultra-left demonstration on May 1st where they burned the American flag and got in fistfights with American workers. And, the Progressive Labor Party, they attacked the labor union leaders in the New York City Labor Council. They they organized an attack on the New York City Labor Council. And, there was a lot of crazy stuff that these communist groups did. And the result, it didn't work, because the American working class, their standard of living had been very high and had been rising. And then they saw the first economic downturn. And in response to that big economic downturn in 1978, 1979, you had the Iran hostage crisis. 1980, there was a huge sweep for Ronald Reagan. Especially white workers in America, they became much more racist. There was much more of a racist sentiment, the whole welfare queen rhetoric that Ronald Reagan was famous for. There was much more pro-military right-wing sentiment. And based on that, all the communist groups said, okay, average Americans are just racist. Average Americans are bad. Average Americans are right-wing. They're no good. You can't talk to them. They'll beat you up. They're fascist. They're racist. They're never going to become communists. And so there was the Great Retreat. The RCP at that moment declared that most workers in America are bourgeoisified. That's one of their teachings, right? That most workers in America are bourgeoisified. They're bought off. They're not revolutionary. Right? Other communist groups went into the labor union bureaucracy and hid, or they started just campaigning for the Democrats. There was the Great Retreat. Well, that was 1979, was a really long time ago. And since that time, the working class in America has gotten way more racially integrated. Right? There's a lot more integration racially. You don't have white neighborhoods that don't want any black people to come in. I mean, you have that a little bit, but not like you once did. Right? There's a lot more racial integration now. There's a whole new generation of young people who really, really don't want to hear about racism, really kind of have an understanding that racism is a bad thing. right? And on top of that, the living standards in America have been consistently dropping. And Bernie Sanders, who ran for president calling himself a socialist, got huge amounts of votes all over the country. A lot of Trump supporters voted for Bernie Sanders. So this idea that you can't talk to average Americans, oh, you can't go to average Americans with communism. Oh, no, you can't do that. Average Americans are all Ronald Reagan supporters. Yeah, they were in 1979. That was 50 fucking years ago, folks. Out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. These are generals fighting the last war. That's what's going on here. Bob Avakian is fighting the last war. 1979, the height of his popularity when he was touring the country and going on national TV talk shows. It was true. Average Americans didn't want to hear it, etc. That is not how it is anymore. We must repudiate the Boston trap, and we must repudiate the Great Retreat, and we must go out of the movement to the masses, and we must win Trump supporters to communism. We must win people that are against the deep state and want to drain the swamp, that are against the wars, that are against the FBI, that are against the Silicon Valley tech monopolists and fascists, that support Julian Assange. We got to get them to see the problem is capitalism and imperialism. And I'm not telling you it's easy. It is not going to be easy because these people have been pumped full of the belief that it's all communism. All the stuff they're mad about is communism. Joe Biden's a communist. You know, China is secretly behind it all. We got a lot of hard work to do. But the wokeism is not fertile ground. The fertile ground is with the Trump people. And if you put forward a real economic solution, and if you make clear you're really against the police state and you're really against the wars, if you put forward real socialistic economic demands, a lot of Trump supporters will listen to you, right? The woke current is more pro-war, more pro-imperialist. They are more in favor of FBI repression. Out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. That is what we need to do. There needs to be a shift in how communists operate in America. And I hope that this is the beginning of the RCP starting to figure that out, because things have changed a lot. Go read my book, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. I talked about it with Kim Iverson. If you actually study the way revolutions happen, you actually study the divisions in the ruling class that exist right now, why they're fighting each other like they are, the economic foundations of these divisions, not the ideology. The ideology is just a smoke screen, right? There's actual ideological divisions. You'll understand that I'm right. And the conclusion I'm coming to is a weird conclusion. It seems odd at first, but it really gets down to it. Donald Trump's supporters, deep down, what they really want from him is they want him to be Huey Long. They want him to be Fidel Castro. And Joe Biden, if you really look at what his economic program really advocates, it's a lot like what the Nazis advocated, saving capitalism with degrowth.